Good afternoon, Facebook. Today is April 15th, 2020. Is it Wednesday? I think it's Wednesday. Actually, I'm not even sure what day of the week it is, but it is the 15th and it's 12:09 p.m. April 15th, kind of a big day. Most people received the $1,200 stimulus payment offered by the federal government today. I know I got mine, but the only reason I know I got it is because I got an email to notify me of it. Ever since I woke up this morning, my bank's website has been inaccessible. And also, when I called the bank just to see if I could get an automated recording to tell me what my balance was, etc., it just gave me a 1 minute 45-second recording and then hung up on me. And that's been what it's been doing all day long. Frustrating, to say the least, but at least at some point during the night, I was able to get an email to confirm that I received the money that I've been waiting for. So that's good news. Hopefully, the bank's website. I wonder if it's because of the amount of money going through it and all the questions being asked and so many people eagerly checking their balances, etc. I wonder if that might be contributing to the problems they're having. So, the stimulus check as a result of COVID-19. So, as of today, the world has surpassed 2 million cases. Looks like worldwide, 2,050,853 positive or confirmed cases, with a worldwide mortality of 132,884 lives lost. I ran the numbers. It looks like 6.5% is the global mortality rate. In the United States, as of this morning's figures, we have a total of 622,412 positive or confirmed cases, and 27,549 American citizens have lost their lives. So our mortality rate in the United States is about 4.4%. I noticed something kind of interesting and startling while I was looking through all these figures today. I've talked a lot about how Italy has a particularly high mortality rate, and their figures for today, they have lost 21,645 lives in Italy out of a total of 165,155 positive or confirmed cases, a 13.1 mortality rate, 13.1% mortality rate. And that is certainly startling, especially when you look at Germany. They're only at 2.7 mortality. China, where this all began, I pointed out their numbers have leveled off as of about a month ago. Actually, probably 5 or 6 weeks ago now, their numbers stopped increasing. They're still sitting at 82,000, to be exact, 82,295, and they've lost 3,342 lives, a 4% mortality rate, compared to Italy's 13.1%. But you know what's weird? The United Kingdom, according to the figures on worldometers.com, has a mortality rate just as high as Italy's, the highest in the world. I triple checked this because I couldn't believe what I was saying, and I haven't seen anything in the news about this like I did with Italy and all the articles and explanations and research, etc., directed at why Italy was experiencing such a high death rate. But I didn't see anything in the news about the United Kingdom. I only discovered this just by looking at the numbers published on worldometers.com. Let me be specific. The United Kingdom is reporting 98,476 positive or confirmed cases, and 12,868 people in the United Kingdom have died from coronavirus, according to this information. That's 13%. And the figure I have for Italy today was 13.1%. What's going on there? I haven't really had a chance to look into it. I was looking through various news articles because I thought I remembered hearing someone say that the United Kingdom was looking to extend their national lockdown all the way into the summer months. And while I was looking through all those headlines to find more information about that, I didn't see anything about this figure that I have here that says that the United Kingdom has tied Italy for having by far the highest mortality rate in the world. What's up with that? For those of you who don't know, I and my family, we lived in England from 1980 until 1984. My older brother lived there from 78 until 84. So, yeah, I have a bit of a personal connection with the United Kingdom. And when I saw that figure and when I was reading news stories about Prime Minister Boris Johnson having been hospitalized and having been transferred to the intensive care unit, apparently he's doing much better now, which is certainly something I'm glad to see. But this startles the hell out of me. Just one more time, United Kingdom and Italy have now essentially tied, leading the world in fatality rate, the mortality rate of the virus, 13%. That, I wonder if it's some kind of a miscalculation or a mistabulation of the figures, because I'm pretty sure that if this was legit, then people would have been talking about it and studying it and freaking out about it a lot more than they even have, which has been a lot already. Now, the United States. It looks like, as of right now, 622,412 cases, 27,549 deaths. New York, as usual, remains the hardest hit. In Pierce County, Washington, I was asked by a friend of mine where our local numbers are sitting. And in Pierce County, we have 963 cases, and Pierce County has seen 23 people pass away. That's pretty, by coincidence, pretty close to what Nebraska's figures are looking like. I've been keeping a consistent eye on Nebraska because that's where I lived for 25 years. Nebraska is looking at 901 cases, and Nebraska has lost 20 people. Now compare that figure to Pierce County, Washington, 963 cases and 23 fatalities. So the entire state of Nebraska is almost exactly at the same spot as Pierce County, Washington, when it comes to how badly they've been affected with the virus. New York State remains the epicenter nationally, 203,000 cases, 203,123, and 11,586 New Yorkers have lost their lives. Washington State, as a total, the total count in Washington State is 10,795. Washington State has lost 547 lives. We are in 13th place, where we were among the top three at the beginning of this. We're down at 13th place, where we've remained consistently for some time, some weeks, I think it is at this point. So, looking at the national and the global response to this, I suppose the biggest news would have to be the president deciding that the United States will cease funding the World Health Organization. I've mentioned the WHO a number of times on this broadcast here. The suspicion that many people have had about the corruption going on within the WHO, its connections and relations with China, have been the subject of a lot of talk and a lot of scrutiny and speculation for years. I referenced a story in a previous broadcast that was all the way back to 2017, which essentially was urging the United States to stop funding that organization until it cleans up its act. And certainly since the COVID-19 thing began, there's been a lot more scrutiny on that subject. There's been accusations of the Chinese government intentionally suppressing the reality of this thing, especially from the beginning. There's been accusations of corruption within the leadership of the WHO, being essentially bought out by China. Now, I'm trying to sort of clarify my own view of that subject because it is true that the United States is paying over 10 times the amount of money to support the WHO that China is paying. And yet, the financial connection between the Chinese government and Dr. Tedros, who is the Director General of the WHO, has come under a lot of fire lately. So, the president, at a press availability in the Rose Garden of the White House yesterday, made the announcement that they were ceasing all funding to the World Health Organization. In his remarks, he went on to delineate the various ways that the WHO has really dropped the ball. And in fact, I've been quoting stories that have been released only since the initial outbreak of the virus, to illustrate how the WHO has been accused of repeating and spreading Chinese propaganda, how the leadership of the WHO was so quick to praise China for how transparent and effective their methods were. And I think at this point, it's not a stretch, regardless of one's political leanings, to look with great suspicion on the way that China's reporting its numbers. They, as I said, their numbers haven't moved appreciably in well over a month, at least according to what they're telling us. And yet we know that what they're telling us is very difficult to accept because of the way that they handled this thing at the very beginning. And they seem to have the full support of the World Health Organization, who wanted to put an increased veneer of legitimacy on everything that was being said by the Chinese government. Most people tend to think that the true beginnings of the Wuhan virus started as early as October of last year, that the mayor of the city of Wuhan was aware of it, but that he was being sort of muzzled by the national government of China not to release what he knew. There are stories about people, citizens within China, who, at great personal risk, made a lot of efforts to get the truth out. And that if this information had been allowed to flow freely, and if it had been regarded with the legitimacy that it merited at the time, that the whole spread of this thing could easily have been contained, and that we might not be sitting where we're sitting right now. These lockdowns nationwide, they are on a state-by-state basis. And the president, while raising some eyebrows at a previous press conference when he said that he had total authority to determine whether the states could open or not, he is essentially given the individual several governors the green light to open their state economies when they see fit. The only thing he said that he would do with his presidential authority is if a state that was really experiencing a lot of problems made efforts to reopen their economies too early, that he would step in and prevent that. He would stop them from opening the state economy. He did not say that he would use his authority to force any state to reopen if they were not ready to. The reopening of the various economies looks like it's going to be a step-by-step thing. While certain businesses may be allowed to open, things like concerts and sports events, stadiums, etc., are not going to be as immediate in their reemergence as other things. As a performing rock musician, I find that particularly troubling, I have to say. And I was listening to an interview earlier today with, I don't know who it was, so I'm going to make this citation advisedly, this reference. Essentially, this expert in California, when discussing that state's impending reopening, was talking about how life essentially is not going to return to normal. While there may be a perceptible easing of the restrictions they're experiencing down there, life as it existed um, before March is a distant mirage on the horizon. And in fact, some people are speculating it may never completely come back. All of this to say the way that our lives here in the United States have been affected is something that very easily could have been avoided if it had not been for the way that this was handled from the beginning by the Chinese government with the support of the World Health Organization. The president's decision to cut off funding to that organization has, of course, sparked a worldwide outcry. Right here at home, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi said that this is an unthinkable and illegal decision. Now, I didn't see anywhere where she elaborated how it's illegal. I think that's kind of a stretch. I think that's more hyperbole. Just look at me, everybody. Look how much I hate the president. How good am I, right? But I don't think it makes a lot of sense to call it illegal. It certainly is a bold move, and it was always sure to piss a lot of people off because there's a very broad globalist sentiment, and for the United States to make a decision that contradicts that ideology is going to raise an enormous chorus of criticism. But I think that was to be expected, and I still think that the amount of money the United States is funneling into that organization, money that comes directly from paychecks from people like me and many millions of others. I think we are well within our rights to reevaluate where we're sending that money. That the corruption of the World Health Organization has been something well documented for a very long time. That the suggestion that we ought to rethink how much money we're going to give them is something that's been being discussed for a long time, years before any of this started happening. And the decision to do it now doesn't really make a whole lot of difference in how this virus is being approached. It's being reacted to as though cutting off funding to this organization, whose ethics are questionable at best, is in some way to directly obstruct the only viable means of fighting against this disease. And I really don't see it that way. I don't see that the World Health Organization, at least insofar as what it's doing with its funding and insofar as its relationship with the country of origin for this disease, I don't see how they are contributing the way that I hear about our government, the state governments, the way that we've constructed hospitals, makeshift hospitals, which, by the way, a lot of these hospitals that have been constructed in places like here in CenturyLink Field up in Seattle. I'm pretty sure that I read someplace that they constructed this huge makeshift hospital, and then days later they just tore the whole thing down, never having used a single bed. It sat empty for a couple days and then was dismantled and shipped out. I hear the same thing essentially is true of the Javits Center in New York City. I'll have to sort of re-examine that to make sure that I'm correct. But anyway, the way that the federal government, the way that the several state governments and local governments are handling this, the way that we have implemented our own guidance and our own mitigation, this is how we've been attacking this thing. How much of those efforts were dependent on the World Health Organization? The World Health Organization certainly did issue guidance, but it was guidance essentially the same as what was being issued by, for example, our own Centers for Disease Control here in the United States. So, in what way is halting our funding of this organization, whom we have every legitimate reason to suspect, in what way is this such a disruption to our journey to get back to normal here? I don't see it as such. And obviously, neither do many factions within our current administration and federal government. So, not sure what else I've got. That was a big topic today. there's always going to be fighting. There's always going to be rancor. There's always going to be recrimination. There's always going to be revisionist history. And I'm glad to be keeping an eye on this and to be keeping a record of it as much as I'm able to. I mean, I'm not a learned economist. I'm not a diplomat. I don't know what these things look like from the perception of someone who is, but this information is being blasted out for the purpose of consumption, and it's a good idea to keep an eye on it. It's a good idea to have your own opinion about it, to question it, to think about it, and to offer your own spin. So that's what I'm happy to continue to do. Now, I watched the latest episode of Better Call Saul. It was a lot longer than the previous few episodes. I think this one clocked in at a full hour, where the other ones stop at about 45 to 47 minutes. So there's a lot happening in that episode. I think we've got the season finale coming up. And then I stumbled across a real gem on YouTube last night. I found an adaptation of Breaking Bad that was produced and filmed and set in Bogota, Colombia. It's all in Spanish, totally new cast, totally new setting, but it repeats, it follows the story line for line in Spanish. There's a couple minor adjustments to the dialogue here and there to accommodate the different setting, etc. But it's like I can go back and watch a complete reimagining of this story portrayed by totally new actors in a different language, and it's been kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie. It actually helps my Spanish quite a bit being able to watch a show whose dialogue I've practically memorized at this point and see those lines delivered in another language. That's pretty fun. So for now, I'm just going to leave things there. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on with respect to the virus, with respect to the government's response. We're finally seeing some movement with the financial aid, and there's things that need to be thought about and re-examined. And you know, I'm going to start trying to flesh out my own suspicions, which I think I've vaguely referenced here and there in the past in this broadcast. But the more information comes out, especially with this World Health Organization stuff, the more those suspicions feel less like fantasy, I guess. So I'm going to maybe start articulating those in as much as I'm able to, and still remain attached to the facts, because the facts themselves are starting to raise some eyebrows. So I'm going to leave things there for today. Everybody, be safe, be good to each other.